West Sacramento Flood Control meeting was come to order. The first item on the agenda is agenda approval. I need a motion.
I so move. Second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Public comment on matters not on the agenda. Request to speak. There's no agenda item on this particular request to speak card, so I assume they want to talk at this time. Mark Gilbert.
Chairman Dent and members of the board, I'm Wilson Went. If it's okay with you, Mr. Gilbert is our consultant. We're both representing CCON. I'd like to go first for 3 minutes and then have him go second. Good morning, board members. I've been in front of you on a number of occasions representing CCON. We're still concerned over the progress of the planning for the program, and I'm here today specifically to ask again that you reconsider the determination you made back in May that the preferred alternative for segment F is the setback alternative, setback levy alternative. Your agenda reports for this meeting show that the 65% design has not yet been finished, but it will be finished very soon. You still have time to get this right, and we're asking that you go back and reconsider that determination and look at what we have requested in the past, which are two alternatives. Mr. Gilbert will touch on one of them. We don't think that the levee in place with the deep cutoff wall was studied adequately, and we've explained that a number of times, and we've talked to your staff about that. But in addition to that, the original memorandum from one of your consultants indicated that the adjacent levee was the preferred alternative, and when you got up to the 15% design, that was the preferred alternative. When you went from 15 to 65, you changed that, and it was the setback levy, which is much more invasive of private property, obviously. Mr. Gilbert's going to touch on that. We don't think it's any safer to have the setback levy. In fact, it's probably less safe because you're bringing the river closer to houses that are built and that will be built immediately adjacent to it. One thing that appears to be missing throughout these proceedings is any indication from your board of senior consultants as to what they think the safest alternative is. The most expensive alternative is the setback levy. It's the cheapest alternative to the agency. It's also the most harmful to private property. So again, I urge you to reconsider that determination and look at either the adjacent levee, perhaps with a partially penetrating cutoff wall, or the in-place levee with a deeper cutoff wall. Thank you very much.
President Denton, members of the board, good morning. My name's Mark Gilbert. I'm a licensed geotechnical engineer, and I'm here today on behalf of CCON with regard to segment F and the alternatives that have been considered by the board. I delivered a letter today that outlines several technical issues, and I'd like to just recap those real quickly here for your benefit. First of all, as Bill just said, at the 15% design level, there was a preferred alternative that was the adjacent levee with a seepage berm. It does not appear that that was brought to you at that time for a vote by the board to be selected. At some point later, apparently in May, the setback levy was voted on as the preferred alternative, reversing the earlier design team's selection. However, in my review of the technical information that was provided up through February of 2012 in the technical memorandum prepared by your geotechnical consultant, the analysis shows that the subsurface conditions for both alternatives are identical. And the resulting mitigation, the analysis of the underseepage, actually shows that your factors of safety against problems with underseepage is greater for the adjacent levee. This is important because it underscores that the adjacent levee with regard to underseepage is a safer alternative. And I'm strictly going by review of their documents. I haven't done any independent analysis in that regard. With regard to a deep cutoff wall for segment F, the conclusions to date have been that there's just not a cutoff layer to a depth of 130 feet. There are techniques to take a cutoff wall deeper than 130 feet, albeit they would be expensive, and perhaps for economical reasons it was not even considered, although it is technically feasible. And I think that's an important factor to remember for a deep cutoff wall in segment F. Lastly, in looking at the 15% draft cost opinion with regards to the earthwork, the setback levee is going to require a substantially greater amount of earthwork. And considering the difficulty in getting good borrow material from a local source and the very expensive and oftentimes unknown costs of importing high-quality material to build a levee, that's going to be a substantial and yet maybe unknown cost impact for doing a setback levee. Given that an adjacent levee is comparably safer, I think it would be good to reconsider that alternative. Thank you.
Thank you for the input. Let's see. Victoria?
President Denton and members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today about our farm at 3000 South River Road in West Sacramento. Actually, 1 year has passed since I first began attending the West Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency workshops and board meetings, and I presented many times at the meetings our desire to save our house and our property, and also have submitted written request also that action be taken to preserve our home. That our house is actually our parents' legacy. And when my father passed this year, he was in a situation where he didn't know what was going to be the future for a place which he had built his dream home and his American dream of owning land and being able to farm on your own land. He didn't know where if that was going to be still there for us to also inherit and also to proceed with our own plans for the future. And because it's taken so long, right now, we can't make any plans. We can't make plans to improve the house and make repairs. We can't proceed with improving the farmland, putting in better wells and a better irrigation system to increase agricultural production. And so we're hoping that in the near future, the board will be able to, and the staff will be able to recognize some of the factors that was presented to me in the letter on September 6th, that there was the possibility of using a combination of hybrid levee procedures that would reduce the footprint of the planned levee and also then preserve our house and much of the river frontage. So our concern then is that perhaps we can get this resolved in the near future before it moves to completion and special consideration be given to us simply because of our heritage. My grandparents immigrated to the United States in the early 1900s. They settled in Sacramento. My family farmed there until the World War II, and during World War II they were relocated. And my father returned to West Sacramento in the mid-40s, after the late 40s, as a tenant farmer. And then he settled at 3000 South River Road. So our intent is to preserve it, preserve our heritage, We don't want to be relocated again, and I hope that you would give us special consideration in the levy development plans to save what we have now. Thank you.
Thank you. Approval of the November the 8th minutes.
Move approval. Second.
Been moved and seconded, we accept and approve the minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it. Review of monthly year-to-date revenue and expenses.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. The cash flow report summarizes receipts and expenditures for the month of October 2012. I'll skip the cover page for the moment and go over the revenues and expenses. In October, the zero land value and SB parcel assessment bills went out, and we accrued $593,000, give or take, worth of assessments. That's about a 10% increase over the previous year. There's an offsetting entry of about $80,000, meaning the net amount for the zero land values this year is about $513,000. Expenditures for the month totaled about $788,000, mostly associated with the Southport project at about $630,000. And also, the debt service payments for September were actually posted to the general ledger, and the amounts were a little bit different than the estimates we were working with, and totaled $848,000 thereabouts. On the cover page, we pull in the amounts from the a summary of Fund 870, which is the WSAFCA's general fund, and the Fund 257, which is the money where the state funds are held, the accounts where those funds are held. The state funds right now, as of the reporting date, show a deficit of $2.8 million, which drags down our balance. But this is related to the delay in the true-up process. And as we speak, last Friday we received $727,000, which will show up in future reports. And this week we're expecting another $1.8 million, which will bring everything back up to where it should be. On the design funding agreement, there's still an additional $10 million worth of capacity, but how much of that we'll actually see hit the books depends on future true-ups and the state's evaluation of which costs are eligible for those funds. And lastly, staff and contract and the project consultants are working on another true-up for the construction side, and we expect another $2.5 million there in the near future. And that summarizes the report for this month.
One question I have. When you talked about the $10 million and it's not showing up, and you talked a little bit about the state true-up.
Yes.
If the GRR is completed, will any of those funds possibly go in for that particular pot also?
I need to defer to Derek for that.
Okay.
That question. I think they're separate processes.
Yeah.
You were asking if the state funds that we would receive for the EIP work are allocable to the GRR?
Right.
They generally are treated separately. So while we have a pool of money which we're able to utilize for both the GRR and the EIP projects, the state has separate agreements to help fund the GRR and a separate agreement to help fund the EIP projects, one for design and one for construction. So when we get money back from the state, and it's our money, it comes into our pockets,
Right.
then we can allocate it however necessary, but they are handled under separate agreement.
Okay. So if the GRR is completed by 2013, like it's supposed to be, and we receive authorization, there's going to be a balance between the amount of money that we have put in and the amount of money that the state has reimbursed us, but there will still be a residual amount. Will the feds then pick that up?
So I'm assuming just a couple quick clarifying questions so I can answer this. You're referring to the GRR contract?
not just the contract, but the GRR really sort of sets in motion
Yeah.
federal participation. Because
That-
right now, we don't have the participation at the federal level that we would like to have.
Sure, okay. So with respect to the GRR, there is federal funding that is being applied to complete the GRR in combination with state and local funding. Once the GRR is complete, then we'll have a chief's report that will go to Congress. When Congress authorizes that report, then we'll be able to secure federal appropriations to help advance work on the West Sac Levee Improvement Program around the entire city.
Okay.
Now, the timing of when that occurs with respect to Southport being completed, at this time, my understanding is that the GRR is scheduled for 2014, not 2013.
Oh, no,
And we hope
get
to
it
go to
sooner,
construction.
sooner.
I know, the sooner the better. We all agree on that. Construction of the Southport EIP is scheduled for 2014 as well. So as that timing gets closer, I think we'll be exploring what makes the most sense for WSAFCA in advancing that project, but also recognizing the fact that we will require federal appropriations. Those will take a couple years to come online after the chief's report is complete, at least usually a year after authorization.
Okay.
So we would likely, but we'd also be in a position to secure credit on that time frame for the
Right.
Southport project, which would then offset our future investments required. So,
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Ken?
No, no question.
Thank you very much. Consideration of approval of a resolution 1212-01 to apply the DWR funding for a competitive grant through the Flood Conservation and Strategy Program.
President Denton, Board, this resolution is required by the state of California in order to submit an application and potentially receive funds for work that would occur in the offset area. That work would include mitigation that is required for the project. We're looking for 100% state cost share of that work, and it will help offset the total cost share required by WSAFCA, and in addition to allowing WSAFCA to leverage the limited local funding that currently exists to implement the program. I want to point out that you're not signing a contract this time. It's not a commitment that you indeed will move forward to do that work. It just allows you the opportunity to secure those funds. The applications are due on January 7th, and this resolution is required to submit a complete application so you have the opportunity to potentially bring additional funding into the program. Any questions?
If we approve this resolution, will that give you ample time to review the letters that we've received today?
Yes, and we will be able to review the letters that we've received to date and respond to those. And again, that's why I wanted to emphasize here at the podium that it really is just preserving our opportunity to secure those funds. It does not represent a commitment at this time. That would occur upon when a funding agreement would be in place. And you can't have a funding agreement in place until CEQA is approved. So really, I would say that it's something that the board should move forward with, recommend approval of the resolution, and it is consistent with how we're moving the program forward.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Bill, I have a couple questions.
Sure.
So I have this clear. You're saying we could reject the opportunity, we could, to not accept the grant at a later date?
If the contract with DWR, we decided that, let's say the project changed or that we didn't like the terms of the agreement, we have the opportunity to reject the agreement. It's not the agreement, it just preserves our opportunity to secure a future agreement.
Is there opportunities to negotiate that agreement, or is it going to be, is there particular guidelines or requirements in place that are set in stone, I guess, for lack of a better term?
The program that DWR is advancing is new, and so once again, we find ourselves in a bit of a leadership role. I believe there will be negotiations with respect to what is contained within the agreement. Certainly the state will have some restrictions associated with the agreement and their ability to invest in certain aspects of the project.
Do we have an estimated dollar amount of what this grant could be?
Right now, they're asking that the grants be capped at $5 million. Again, I think we're still negotiating, and I hope that maybe if we can get more money, we most certainly will try. But right now, that's what they've said, that they're going to try to cap them at $5 million. But we're not going to restrict ourselves to that at this time.
Is the pool of money known? What the quantity?
Currently, $25 million.
Okay.
And there were 41 applicants who applied in the first round. I believe there's about 7 or 8 who they've asked to submit a second round application for, that they're interested, made it through the pre-screening process, and have now been asked to submit a full proposal by January 7th.
Okay.
No questions. We need a motion then to adopt the resolution.
Mr. Chair, I'd move approval of Resolution 12-1201 as required by DWR as part of the final proposal grant application for competitive funding for the Flood Conservation Strategy Program. Authorize our general manager or his designee to file the final proposal grant with DWR on behalf of WSAFCA Board.
I'll second the motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the grant. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. The item number 6 on the agenda is a consideration of a resolution 1212-02 authorizing new offers for real property interest from certain residential zone parcels within the Rivers EIP area and authorizing and directing the general manager to make revised offers.
Chairman Denton, members of the WSAFCA Board, you took my opening statement, by the way. So staff is requesting that you approve Resolution 12-12 to authorize the general manager to proceed with negotiations with the Capachu and the Campora property owners. As you can see, the staff report was prepared by Katie Yancey. She's still the lead for the Rivers real estate acquisitions for the project, for the Rivers Early Implementation Project. As you know, the EIP in terms of construction is substantially complete. In the spring of 2011, the board approved a resolution for just compensation to present offers to the Capachu and Campora property owners. Based on the extent of those property rights, much of the monetary amount that was associated with that appraisal was due to the damages to the remainder of the property. It limited some of its development potential as well as its resale value, marketability perhaps. Both property owners rejected those offers. And they spoke with staff, spoke with BRI, the city's WSAFCA's consultant, responsible for property acquisition and negotiation. And really, they were concerned about the extent of the rights that were being requested. Based on that, Michael Bissett, as it's told to me, went back to the Central Valley Flood Protection Board to discuss the permit and see if, in fact, the real property rights relative to the easement necessary for the Rivers EIP could be reduced. The Central Valley Board agreed to allow the geometry to be reduced. Staff was then directed BRI to develop new property descriptions as well as a new appraisal. The The particulars of the initial property rights and the revised property rights are included in your packet, and ultimately, we're still requesting that the board approve the resolution for just compensation consistent with the new appraisal, and allow the property negotiations to be reinitiated by BRI with the general manager's support and approval.
I think this was explained to me once before. I'm going to ask it again, though. Is the Rivercrest Drive going to be the maintenance road for that area?
I believe that it is.
There's not going to be any access then, from a maintenance point of view, between the property line and the river?
I can't say for certain, but I can't say for certain. There could be an event that would cause that to happen, but generally maintenance will not be occurring on the private property.
Just let me get this straight so that maybe make it easier for a number of other people. And that is, the original offer for the easements was rejected.
That's correct.
So we went back and we talked to the state and told the state that it was rejected. And is there a way to lessen the footprint for this particular easement? So the state said, well, okay, yes, you can. You cut here, 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 whatever it is. So we go ahead and we have now brought forth a proposal for an easement that is less expensive as far as WSAFCA is concerned, but it gives less monies to the property owners in return for us, in essence, that easement having a smaller footprint.
That's correct.
Okay.
And they have a more useful parcel.
They have a more usable parcel and all of that, but at the same time, they have not agreed to it. And
Not
that's
yet.
what we're doing today, is we're just taking that, say, okay, hey, look, we're reducing the amount of footprint, but at the same time, we're giving you certain guarantees on properties, and this is the amount of money that is necessary as far as the easement is concerned. This is our compensation for it.
Essentially, yes. I mean,
Okay.
there's a new appraisal. The negotiation process is part of a continuum.
Sure.
And so when they refuse an offer and they ask us to go back and did some work, we've done some work. We'd like to present them with the new offer. They can consider it. They can refuse it. They will have an opportunity to get their own appraisal. And really, today's resolution is just allowing those negotiations to recommence.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
No questions.
Okay, I need a motion to accept the resolution 1212-02.
I would move we adopt Resolution 12-1202.
I need a second.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt resolution 1212-02. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Item number 7, consideration of a selection of Kearns and West and Douglas Environmental to provide outreach and environmental services.
Chairman Denton, members of the board, good morning. As you recall, the board previously authorized submittal of a grant application to DWR for directed funding for the development of the Regional Flood Management Plan on behalf of the Lower Sacramento and Delta North regions. This plan will be developed through a partnership with DWR and the local agencies in our region, with WSAFCA leading the grant administration. The Regional Flood Management Plan will identify and prioritize proposed flood system improvements and non-structural actions that build on system-wide and regional flood risk management. It will develop a more detailed regional investment plan, and importantly, it will establish the basis for securing state funds for future projects under Prop 1E and Prop 84. Now, in November, the members of the committees of our Regional Flood Management Plan team requested qualifications from firms to assist with outreach activities and environmental planning in support of that plan. Proposals were received from multiple teams, and a selection committee was formed and recommended Kearns and West and Douglas Environmental. That recommendation was accepted by the Joint Administration Committee, which included WSAFCA representation, and the Plenary Committee, which also includes over 30 agencies within those two regions. So the action requested of the board today is, one, to ratify the selection made by the committees of the Lower Sacramento Delta North regions as outlined in the report, direct the general manager or his designee to enter into professional services contracts with the aforementioned firms in an amount within his existing contract authority, but only after a commitment letter for funding is received from DWR. And then lastly, direct the general manager to return to the board as necessary to seek permission to amend those contracts if necessary to be consistent with the total funding commitment from DWR. This action is needed to allow work to move forward quickly with the development of the Regional Flood Management Plan so that we can plan milestones and give our region and the plan the best advantage possible to compete favorably for state funding on future flood risk reduction projects. All of the work that will be performed by these consultants is 100% state funded under the grant once that approval is received. And again, no action would be taken by the general manager to secure those contracts until after the commitment letter from the state is received.
And there'd be no cost to us.
No cost to us.
Need a motion?
Okay, how's that? I'll make a motion to accept.
We have a motion to accept. I need a second.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt the consideration for selection of Kearns West and Douglas Environmental. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. West Sacramento project updates.
Thank you, Chairman and Board. I'll go through what I believe to be the highlights over the course of the last month since the last update. The 2011 EIP projects. Rivers EIP, we're essentially in the last stages of completing the riparian mitigation construction. The CHP Academy site, that project is complete. The notice of completion has been filed, and we're in the process of closing out that project with the state. For the Southport EIP, second administrative draft for the EIR was released. Comments have been received, and we are currently meeting with Army Corps staff to review their comments. The third administrative draft will follow the conclusion of that review with the Corps. Also, staff has received a draft real estate project management and communications plan. We are currently under review. The Southport, excuse me, the Southport project, 65% design documents are still scheduled for completion in January of 2013. And the issue of borrow material for levee construction and berm construction, that will begin in earnest in January. For the general reevaluation report, we continue to meet with district staff to move that project forward. There's been a couple of inspections performed within the city recently along the levees, and that tentative, the draft, of the GRR is still scheduled for completion in August of 2013, with the final completion at the conclusion of 2014. The Sac Bay Setback Levee project was recently winterized by placing visqueen, and that project is secure for the winter. And that winterization was, and visqueen was placed on the new levee that was just constructed. Emergency preparedness and flood season coordination last month. On November 14th, the city held its annual pre-wet season flood coordination meeting, and that was held at the city's Emergency Operations Center, which is Fire Station 45. We had representatives from the city, RD 900, DWR headquarters, as well as the local maintenance yard. Additionally, at the end of last month, DWR provided flood fright training to West Sacramento staff on Novembers 27 and 28. And participants included city personnel, as well as RD 900, RD 537, DWR local maintenance yard, and then also the West Sacramento Community Emergency Response Team members, otherwise known as the CERT members. I think lastly, just to summarize some of the transition issues since the departure of some of the staff, the flood protection manager recruitment opened today. And that recruitment will run for approximately 6 weeks and close, well, I guess, scheduled to close January 11th, so it'll run about 4 weeks. Director appointment will be made for Director of Public Works in the next couple of weeks. And we want to ensure the board that, we recognize the importance of the flood program to the city, WSAFCA, and the members of the community and residents. We're confident that our transition plan that we have in place will allow us to move forward effectively and timely so that we continue to meet our progress with the Southport project, as well as our other program objectives. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
On the selection committee that we're going to have for a new flood control manager and et cetera, I've talked to a couple of members of the board, and they agree that they should be a member of the board on that selection committee. And based on that, I would hope that the staff would take a good look at this. And if you give me just a minute here, I'll poll one member of the board. Tommy, for the board. Is it Tommy for the board? Sure. Okay. We have agreed that that Tommy should be a representative on that board at this time. Okay. If you accept?
Tom accepts.
Okay. Tom accepts. Okay. Just want that, to kind of get a little bit better handle on what's happening. Also, I would like to ask the staff to take a good look at the 2 letters that was, or 3 letters or so, that was carried to us today on the 13th from well, several letters were handed in. And take a good look at those, and let's review those and see if somewhere along the line in our desire to provide the best safety that we can for the people of West Sacramento, that these considerations were taken into consideration, that these recommendations were, and in a timely manner get back to them and let them know that what positions that we're looking at and that sort of thing. And before you send those recommendations back, I would hope that you would send a copy of those letters to us. I know one of them has to come from me to be signed. And so if we would do that, I would sure appreciate it. And I'm sure they would too. Okay, based on that.
I have a question.
Okay.
On the 2011 EIP CHP Academy, all the work is done, everything is fine. Has the Corps certified that levy?
So the Corps won't certify the levies. The Corps certifies levy systems now as meeting a certain standard. And through the fact that we went through the 408 process and got a permit, they reviewed our construction plans and essentially have agreed that they meet a certain standard, in this case, a minimum level of 200-year protection. Our design team, our engineering team who put that together, including the geotechnical engineer, the civil engineer, hydraulics, along with the construction manager, will be putting together a certification that it was constructed in accordance with plans and specifications. The Corps of Engineers will review the construction documentation report, which basically just goes through and states everything that happened during construction, much like what it sounds like. And so they will have another opportunity to review and approve that report. So that is how that process will unfold from a certification standpoint. The certifications that we put together will allow us to easily submit to FEMA in the future as well for certification. So it's all part of a documentation trail, if you will.
So that deviates from past Corps practices, because Corps used to, they would certify a levy, and then that, in essence, raised the comfort level of WSAFCA or whoever.
Yeah.
And because if something happened then, the Corps would certainly get involved and do whatever they're supposed to do. And it sort of gave the flood agencies a level of comfort that they could bypass. So that has all changed. Now it is the system approach.
That is correct. The Corps of Engineers statement is they approve at a system level. Well, they'll certify a levee system to meeting a certain standard, but in practice, I would say the Corps of Engineers does not certify levees anymore, and that it will be a team of consultants, and even if the Corps does come in at the end and finish off the project, it'll be some type of a probably consultant approach to certification that we meet both the FEMA 100-year and the state 200-year standard as required by SB 5.
That's sort of a shame, but okay, thank you. Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah.
Meeting's adjourned.